everyone, it's Laurel. In today's video, I'm going to show you some magic with something that you probably already have. It's white pigment ink. You can do some fun magical things with it. So stay tuned. All right, I'm going to start off with one of my favorite ways to use the white pigment ink, and that's with ink layering. Now, this is a shortcut if you want to layer, I don't know, colors, whatever. You usually have to have 3 different shades. Well, here I'm going to show you how you can go ahead and ink up whatever you want to ink up, but then you can use your white ink pad to create those different layers. So this is a beautiful stamp set from Penny Black. I've had it forever. Everything I'm using I will link below in the description for you. So I'm going in first with some spruce ink from Catherine Pooler to just stamp out the trees. And I'm using the Misty stamping tool, my stamp positioner. I love it. I'm also able to do some double stamping as well. This is Sandcastle, a brown ink from Catherine Pooler. And I'm going to go ahead and ink up the fence in brown. And to intensify that brown even further, I'm just going to double stamp it, another benefit of using the Misty positioner there. Plus my ink pad is dry and I've just been too lazy to refill it, even though we clearly have nothing else to do right now under house arrest. But this is absolutely beautiful as is. It's just stunning. But I want to kind of create an ink layering look. So I'm going to take my white pigment ink. I am using the scrapbook.com white pigment ink, and I'm just inking up kind of the tips and the edges wherever I want it to give the appearance almost of snow, if you will. So I'm actually doing ink layering, but in reverse. So most of the time you start with your lightest ink and you go darker. Here I'm just going in with the white. So I have softened the edge of the trees and some of the ground, and it's just beautiful. I'm going to go in and ink up a little bit more with the same ink, you know, not in the exact same places. I almost want to create it another layer, like a softer layer on some of those areas. And I mean, effortless, I tell you. I love using the white pigment ink in this way, and this card is done. Now I'm going to make some of these I'm going to go ahead and turn into complete cards and show you the pictures, and others I'm just going to leave as backgrounds, and I can create something later. Oh, this is another one of my favorites. Create an overlay or transparency, like for reals. Wait till you see this. So this is a stencil from Trinity Stamp. It comes with the negative space, which is that circle that you see there, so I can just stamp everything in the middle. And then it also comes with the mask, so I could put the circle over the top and remove the negative space, and then I could do all the stamping outside the circle, if that makes any sense. So this is a little balloon stamp set. Well, it's not a stamp set. It is a stamp image from a stamp set from Ellen Hudson called Everyday Doodles. I love this little doodle. I am using the solid image. So the stamp set comes with outlines, and this is the solid image that you stamp. And there's a whole bunch of different doodles. I'm going with the balloon. And I'm using various color inks. I'm using Catherine Pooler inks, and you'll see me mix in a little bit of Distress Oxides as well. It's kind of what I had on my desk, if you will. Sometimes I just use what's on my desk. It almost makes it easier because it's like right there. And all these colors just came together. So I am just stamping balloons. This just looks like a hot mess right now. You don't know what I'm doing. It looks like I'm just blowing big bubbles onto this card. It almost looks like a gumball machine. Kind of doesn't. I could turn this into a gumball machine, but I wanted balloons. But you could totally use this balloon solid image and make gumballs. You sure could. So anyway, I'm just going in. This is my final color, and here's where the white pigment ink comes in. I'm going to go and just ink right over some of the balloons. Not all of them, but some of them, especially the ones that are overlapping, like the colors, and you know, when the 2 colors overlap, sometimes they're pretty, sometimes they're not. So I'm especially choosing the balloons to kind of overlay over the colors that didn't necessarily mix very well. They weren't little buddies. And I love this look. I love this look. Now, some of the ink is picking up and getting on that white pigment pad. I'm not worried. I just, when I'm done with all of this, I just swiped my ink pad onto my glass mat, and I also bought the ink refill, and then I just re-wetted my ink pad. It was not a big deal at all. And here's a look at this birthday card. Isn't that cute? Don't you love those balloons? And here's a close-up of that white pigment ink and how it just created this beautiful transparency or overlay. Now, you can do heat embossing with the white pigment ink because pigment ink stays wet longer. So at first I was going to use a white piece of cardstock, and then I said, no, no, you're not going to be able to see that. So I'm going to switch it up and get a blue cardstock. But sometimes when I use my embossing ink pad, it's clear, right? Embossing ink is clear, and I don't see where I stamped. So if I'm trying to do specialty embossing or mixing colors, I don't know where I stamp. So this is where my white pigment ink comes in. This is where I got smart, decided to switch it out to a blue panel. So here I am, I'm using my anti-static tool, which I do every time I heat emboss. Uh, it's just easier. Just trust me on that. It's just trust me. Use the anti-static tool. You will thank me. And I've gone ahead and inked that beautiful image up from Catherine Pooler. And then I'll sprinkle on a couple different shades of Wow Embossing Powder. Again, everything I'm using, the specific colors, everything is going to be in that supply list linked below in the description for you. Now, before I get on with this, please make sure you click on the subscribe button down below. It's that button that says subscribe. And click on that notification bell as well to be notified of all of my upcoming videos. I would really appreciate that. All right, so I am choosing embossing powders that are opaque, which means you'll be able to see them on any color cardstock that you use. There are translucent embossing powders which will pick up the color of the cardstock you're using. So I'm making sure that I chose opaque. And then I am using my Wow Heat gun. It has two settings. One is for watercoloring, one is for heat embossing. So obviously I chose my heat embossed setting, melted that powder, and then I have this beautiful, beautiful background right here with all of these different color embossing powders. Some are metallics. They were kind of like a different gradient of embossing powders and mixes. So it really, really is just stunning. So at this point, all I'll have to do is add a sentiment strip. I could die cut this down a little bit as well if I wanted to and make a beautiful card out of this. This is also something fun to mass produce. Just stamp a bunch of backgrounds with the white pigment ink, sprinkle on the embossing powders, and you could have a bunch of backgrounds to use later. Another thing I love to do is shadow stamping. Chose some dark cardstock. I got smart here as the video went on. And I'm going to ink up this beautiful floral image from Alta Nu with the white ink. And this is where using my Misty really comes in handy. I mean, it's just like, I got to use it. There's no way I would be able to do without it. I shifted my card over a tiny little bit. That stamp at the top was mounted. I never moved it. So all I did was shift my cardstock over a teeny tiny bit. And then I'm inking this up several times with this Distress Oxide ink that I had. I wanted to make sure that that color is going to show. So once I'm satisfied that you guys are going to, well, nope, not satisfied yet. Need to keep inking it up because I need it to show on camera. I can see it, but I need it to really be intense so you guys can see it on camera or you'll just think this is really boring. So here's that. So I shifted it a tiny little bit. And so I've got the orange and the white. So the white almost acts like it's a little outline, if you will. So here I am on some brown cardstock, or it's not brown, craft cardstock. I'm using that same ink, oxide. I went ahead and stamped it several times. I decided to take that out of the video because you don't want to see me doing the same thing over and over and over again. So here I am. I moved the cardstock just a tiny little bit, and I mean a tiny bit. And then I'll go in and add the ink. And again, I'll have another outlined look here. That's my Gryffindor Harry Potter sweatshirt you keep seeing in the sleeve. It's got a little emblem on the arm. Anyway, so here's a look at that. It's very, very, very subtle. But if you want a more dramatic effect, you can follow all the same steps, but shift your cardstock over more than just a little bit. Maybe, shift it over double what you've been doing. And then go ahead and ink it up. And you'll have a more dramatic effect, especially if you're choosing very bright contrasting colors. And this one I went ahead and turned into a card. I just ink blended around the edges, stamped a sentiment there, and bada bang, bada boom, this card's done. And this is probably my favorite. I probably do like the more dramatic look, if you will, of the outlines. Another way you can use white pigment ink is to soften your colors. I don't know about you, but sometimes I have stamped things that either turned out too bright or I ended up not liking the colors or something. So I'm using this beautiful sandy stamp set from Catherine Pooler. I'm going ahead and using a couple different colors of Distress Oxides. And of course my Misty, thank God, because I go over and over and over and over again of stamping just because I need these colors to be intense for the video, but I really like bright colors. So I love how it looks now, but here I'm going to go in and add purple on purpose because I'm going to mess it up. I like the left side. I like the right side. I do not like the middle. See, no, it just is not working for me. So I'm going to make sure I clean my stamp off good. Hello, white pigment ink. I'm going to go ahead and ink that up very well. I have also re-inked my pad since the card before last, so this ink pad is very juicy. And then I'll stamp right in the same spot. Thank you, Misty Stamping Tool. And everything is nice and soft and just very subtle. So here's what it looked like before I stamped it with the white pigment ink, and here's what it looked like after. You can clearly see the difference. I didn't want it that light, so once the pigment ink dries, I can go ahead and just re-ink it however I want it to be, right? So let me give you a little look at this. So I'm just kind of inking it up. Again, I'm taking my microfiber cloth there and just softening up some of those hard lines, and I'll go ahead and stamp over the dry ink. Make sure your pigment ink is dry, and then I've got a beautiful card here. So have no fear if you do some crazy stamping and it's just not what you thought it would be. Get out that magic. I got a magic cup and now I got a magic ink pad. Do you know what I'm talking about when I talk about my magic cup? I'm going to link up here right now in the right hand corner about my magic cup video. Everybody should have a little magic in their life. And here is this card. I did turn this one into a card and I love the colors so very much. You can also do the same thing on dark colored cardstock as well. So that's just leftover ink I had on my stamp, the oxides, onto some black cardstock, and then I'm going to do the same thing, ink it right over the top. Thank you, Misty. I know you're tired of hearing me say that, but I wouldn't be able to do any of this stuff if I didn't have my Misty, because I'm not good with aligning stamps. Even though they're clear, even though I can see straight through them, I still don't do it right, ever. You can also create a halo or vignette effect, you know, that vignette stuff that you can do with your camera filters. So I'm going to go in with this white ink. I'm using a blending brush and I'm just creating a beautiful halo. You can do a chalkboard look onto dark cardstock with this, doing basically the same thing I'm doing now, just all over your card. So it's really, really fun. And if you have bright, bright colors, and then you put this beautiful soft look around it, it would be so stunning. These colors on this card weren't dark, you know, and vibrant to begin with, but think if they were, right? It would have been really pretty. You can also add a little bit of shading, kind of going on the same line of the halo, but you can add a little shading. This is a great way to add some clouds maybe into your background, or if you're working on a card and you want to add a little snow look, you can do that. You can also take a blender pen. I love this blender pen. It's everything. And just add a little shadow here and there directly from I'm using some of the ink that got on the lid of the pad when I did my refill. And you can just add a little shading here and there, wherever. I'm not good with markers or anything like that. That is not my forte. So I added some white shading, and then I just went in very quickly with some blue oxides and was able to create this card. Easy peasy. And last but not least, if you have colored pencils and you like it, you can totally color right over the pigment ink. So I stamped this a bunch of times, these flowers or whatever, these little doodads, cute little stamps from Altenew. And then I handed this card over to my daughter, and she colored right over the top of this. She used colored pencils. I'm not going to do it on camera because I can't color. She is 7 and she can do a better job than I could do with pencils. So if you're under house arrest, this might be, and you have kids, and house arrest, that sounds so bad. I'm not a criminal. Let me, if you were under a quarantine of some kind and you need to stay in your home, then this is a great opportunity if you have children. Just stamp a bunch of stuff with some white pigment ink onto some colored cardstock, give your kids the crayons or the pencils or whatever, and just have a ball with it, right? So much fun. So I have a video right here. Check it out. It's a video that talks about all these different techniques you can do with your inks that you have. So be sure to look at it. Check it out. Let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye. That was weird.